Okay, and welcome to our sport education webinar. Thank you to those of you who are joining us live right now as we do this webinar. And for those of you who are watching the replay, thanks for catching up with us in your time. I'm glad that you've been able to make the time to watch us. So today I want to share with you some of my experiences in using the sport education model, and I'll also share with you some other examples of people who have used the sport education model and hopefully give you some resources that are going to get you started thinking about how you can use the sport education model in your physical education program. So I'm just going to jump to the slideshow and we're going to get rolling. Okay, so inquiring into sport education. Those of you that don't know me, obviously, if you found your way here, you probably do know me and you have heard of me before, but my name is Nathan Horn, originally from Tasmania. In Australia, I went to the University of Tasmania where I studied a Bachelor of Human Movement for 4 years, majoring in physical education. Then soon after graduating, moved to the UK, taught for a couple of years there in a special needs school. Shortly after that, moved to Cambodia and taught in an international school there. Milan, Italy for a couple of years. Singapore for the past 5 years, and my time in Singapore is coming to an end, and I will be soon moving to Canada with my wife and my child, and we will be starting a new life there. So very, very exciting times. I've had a very varied background, but also really excited about what the future holds for me in terms of my career and my family. Currently, I am a physical educator at ISS International School in Singapore. I have been there for 5 years. I teach elementary school physical education, and I'm also the head of student welfare and enrichment. And when I move to Canada, I will be taking a position at Meadow Ridge School in Maple Ridge, just outside of Vancouver, where I'll be teaching again elementary physical education, and I'll be the head of department for the physical education department of the school. So I'm super excited about that. I run the website iPhys-Ed.com, and I'm guessing if you found your way here to this webinar, you've been to that website before. If you haven't, make sure you check it out. And I'm lucky enough to take part in 2 podcasts. One is the Phys-Ed podcast with my good friend Joe Fife from the physicaleducator.com. And the other one is the Fundamental Movement podcast, which I take part in with Andy Vassley, Dean Dudley, and Aaron Beatley, and a wide range of other guests. And we talk about all things physical education, and really get a point of view from academics and practicing teachers. Finally, something new that we've started is the squad. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment about what the squad is and how you can join that if you're interested in doing that. So our new initiative is the squad, which is a physical education online coaching community, which is hosted on Slack. The idea was that I want to be able to help as many people as I can, or as many physical education teachers as I can. And I've been really lucky to go to a number of different conferences and be able to present workshops all around the world. Having a brand new family, so my daughter is currently 7 weeks old. I'm not going to have the opportunity to be able to travel as much as I have in the past, but I still want to be able to help people. So by setting up this online community, I am able to help people in that way, and especially in ways like this webinar, for example. So this webinar that's being run now is one of the free monthly webinars that will take place as part of the Slack community. So if you join the squad, you're going to get access to monthly webinars just like this. You're going to get one-on-one coaching with me and free premium resources and community support. I'll talk a little bit more about the squad later. As always, I want us to really think about the idea of purpose, and that there should always be purpose to what we do in physical education. This quote is something that really, for me, always hits home about the practice of physical education being primarily focused on the transmission of decontextualized sports techniques to large classes of children who possess a range of interests and abilities. And in those situations, learning rarely moves beyond introductory levels. So that was a quote from David Kirk from his book, Physical Education Futures in 2011. And this quote, I think, for me, really makes me think about the idea of making sure that we have a lot of purpose in everything that we do within physical education, and how today, particularly, how sport education and the sport education model can help us to define that purpose and to use that purpose in a meaningful way that's going to help students long after they leave our gyms. Again, this quote from the Quality Physical Education Guidelines from UNESCO, that physical education is the most effective means of providing all children and youth with the skills, attitudes, values, knowledge, and understanding for lifelong participation in society. We know that UNESCO and their quality PE guidelines talk about physical activity, they talk about sport, and they talk about quality physical education. In other webinars, we've talked about quality physical education being something that's planned, progressive, inclusive, and is the foundation of a lifelong engagement in physical activity and sport, but it should be developmentally appropriate. It should give students the skills they need to lead a physically active life. So we're talking about quality physical education. That's what we're talking about. And today, sport is going to play a large part of that quality physical education program and the way that sport education fits within that quality physical education space. And sport education really is one way that we are going to enable students not only to have the skills, knowledge and understanding to be able to participate in sport, but also to be lifelong participants in society. And as you're going to see as we go through the sport education model, a lot of what is happening isn't necessarily to do with the actual playing of the sports. It's developing the skills and understandings and knowledge and values to be an active participant within a sport organization or within the larger society. So I think sport education is one of the many models that we can use that are going to help us to develop a quality physical education program. All right, so I think that video is a fantastic one. It really sums up how sport can be a really powerful vehicle through which we can teach students not only those knowledge and skills, but the values and attitudes and what it means to be a good member of society. Now, today's focus is going to be on the sport education model. Now, this is a model that was developed by Daryl Seidentorp, who is an absolute guru in the space of physical education and in sport education in particular. Now, I was really, really lucky in 2015 when I was a keynote at the National PE Institute in Asheville, North Carolina, to meet Daryl Seidentorp. He was there being presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I was lucky to have him speak after my keynote and to view my keynote, as well as to catch up with him and Don Hellison from the Teaching Personal Social Responsibility field after the conference for a beer at the hotel bar. And it was an absolute honor to meet him and to pick his brain on the sport education model. Now, the sport education model, as Siedentorp has proposed it, looks a little bit like this. So sport forms the context for which learning can take place. Now, he really thought about the idea that sport had the ability to bring people together and to help them to develop those not only skills, but those values and morals that make people into good community members. So well before the UNESCO document came out, Darryl had already sort of got his head around the idea that sport could be an area where those things could be developed. And he broke his model down into the following. He said that sport has an element of affiliation, that you feel a part of a team. So being affiliated to a group is one element of the sport education model. That a sport education or a sport generally involved seasons, that it involved formal competition, that it involved keeping records, statistics, and data, that there was generally a culminating event to a sport as the context. So whether it be a final or a gold medal match, there was some event or celebration at the end of that season that was a culminating event for that season, and that there was an element of festivity that existed around those sporting events. So within any sporting context, these things existed, and he thought that if he could create a model where students were engaged within a sports context, that they would experience all of these things, and through experiencing all of these things, they would develop the knowledge and attitude and values to become those fantastic members of their community and to have engagement within sport as a longer term prospect. So talking about seasons, he defined that seasons is that sport is played in seasons that contain both practice and competition elements, that sport is played in teams and players connect with and usually belong to one team for a season, that seasons include a schedule of competitions between teams, that records of individuals and team participation are kept to provide feedback and enable goal settings by participants, that individual and team performances are recognised and celebrated throughout the season and during a culminating end of season event, and that seasons typically come to a conclusion with a defining event. Therefore, seasons conclude with a festival type event that celebrates the success of all who participated. He said that there was 3 areas that he wanted students to develop. He wanted them to become competent. So that a competent player had the sufficient skills to participate satisfactorily, execute strategies that are appropriate for the complexity of the game being played, and is knowledgeable. That a literate player understands the values of rules, rituals, and traditions of sport, and is able to distinguish between good and bad sport practices in a variety of settings. And that they were enthusiastic, one who perseveres, one who preserves, protects, and enhances the culture through participation, involvement, and appropriate behavior. So this is what he was looking for students to be. Now, if we're talking about a previous webinar and other areas that we talked about physical literacy, I think this fits really, really well with the idea of physical literacy as a purpose, that sport education can be one model that's going to help students to become confident, to be able to understand the values of rules and rituals in sport, and to be enthusiastic and confident about what they're doing. So as talking about sport education, it is only one model in a variety of different teaching models out there that exist, whether it's teaching goals for understanding, sport education, teaching personal social responsibility, cooperative learning. There are so many different models or methods for thinking about the way that we develop physical education curriculums, and sport education is one. Now, in sharing with you my experience with sport education, it is not going to be exactly 100% as the model was written. It's going to be, I'm going to share with you how I did it in my school, for my situation, for my students, for the situation that I was in. And I think that this next piece of audio that comes from the Fundamental Movement podcast really sums up why I think it's important to use models as a basis for what you do, but don't feel that you need to subscribe to them fully.
To be a models-based practitioner requires incredible depth of knowledge, and that's not depth at the surface knowledge either. Teachers who get to deep understanding of any of these models also understand the superficial layers, what it takes and what you have to penetrate through to get to that deep understanding. It gives you resilience in face of the chaos that ensues in your class. The really high performers are what Nathan was talking about, where they now see that there is merits in sport education, there is merits in TGFU or fitness education or whatever it is, and they cherry pick and build this new, beautiful, hybrid, organic pedagogy, right?
It's theirs. That is theirs and theirs alone, because they've developed it based on their understanding.
And it hits the other thing too, Andy, it hits the context, right? It hits their kids in the moment.
All right, and I think that's a really important conversation that took place within the Fundamental Movement podcast there about models, is that really models are there to serve as a basis for us to develop our physical education curriculums around. However, creating your own hybrid model using a variety of different strategies from different models is very much okay. As Dean and Andy said, it's developed based on your experience, your understanding, your knowledge, and your experience with the students that you have in front of you. So as I go through my experience as a sport education model, as we get a little bit further into this webinar, I want you to keep that in mind, that this is not by any means sport education as it's written in the textbook. This is sport education as through my understanding and through what I thought was the best way to do it for my students. Now, this was now 2013 or 2014, so it was 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago when this happened, and in other times that I've done it, it has changed. But at the time when I did it, this was what I thought was my understanding and my what I thought was going to work best for my students. So as we go through this sport education journey, we're going to use an inquiry cycle. So we're first going to tune in to what we were doing. We'll find out more. We'll sort out some information. We'll go further. We'll reflect upon it, and we'll take action. And I'll take you through how my students use this inquiry cycle to help them to work their way through the sport education season that took place. So tuning in. So I knew that I wanted to do a sport education unit with my students, and I did a little bit of research and then decided that even though I was a little bit worried, a little bit scared about doing it, I just thought, let's give it a try and see how it goes. So I did it with two grade 4 classes. At the time, there were 2 every class at the school in Singapore. There were 3 classes at every grade level, but in grade 4, there were only 2 classes. So I thought that would be a good class to do this with as a bit of an experiment. So what we did is, as the classes, we sat down and we watched a hockey match. So this was the Vancouver Canucks versus the Calgary Flames. The students sat and watched maybe 10 to 15 minutes of this match, and their prompt or their idea was to think about all the different people that were involved in making this event happen. So they had big pieces of paper in front of them, and as they were watching, they were writing down all the different people that were involved. So of course, they were writing things like players, referees, coaches, trainers, the crowd, announcers, cameramen, commentators, people selling food. The list really was endless, as they thought more and more deeply about the people that were involved in making this event happen and making this event a reality. So they started to tune into the idea of what it took, or the amount of people that were involved in running a sports event. So we decided after doing that we would like to create our own hockey championship, which we called the Mustang Cup. At the time, the Mustang was our school mascot, so it made sense that our grade 4 hockey championship would be called the Mustang Cup. So once the students and myself had decided that we were going to do this, we decided that we needed to find out some more information, and we needed to think about all those different roles and how they were going to work for us, because some of the roles obviously were necessary for us within our hockey tournament. However, some of the roles maybe weren't so necessary. So we narrowed the list down to a manageable number. In the end, I think we ended up with players, coaches, we had media, we had advertising, and we had referees and cheerleaders were our different roles that we came up with as being important for running our event. What you can see there is the students filling in a Google form, which was an application form for them to decide which roles they think that they were best suited to. So they had to, just like a normal job application, fill in and say, I'm interested in doing this role. Here's why I'm interested in doing it. Here are the skills that I can bring to that. And here's, why I think I'm the best person to do that role within the sport education season. So that took them probably 5 to 10 minutes to fill in their application form. Some of them did it there during class time. Some of them did it at home after school in their own time. And I gave them a few days, maybe 3 to 4 days, to think about what roles they wanted to do and why they wanted to do that. Some students decided they only wanted to do one role. Some students decided that they wanted to do multiple roles. And there was no guarantee either that students would get the role that they wanted. It really depended on their explanation as to why they thought that they would be good at doing that role. So it made them a little bit more accountable rather than everybody deciding they wanted to do the same thing. They obviously had to choose something that they knew that they were going to be good at and knew that they were able to help contribute towards the success of the season together. Once we'd done that, we looked at all the responses, and we separated the students into their different jobs. So you can see here an example of some of our media people there doing some interviews. We've got our website designer who is creating a website and posting updates. We've got our advertising people there doing some posters, and then you can see coaches and players using their practice time. So as we developed those roles, students were in those roles. Now, at the start of the season, it was very, very chaotic. Now, I knew that in doing the sport education season, I wanted to give the students a lot of control, a lot of choice over what they did. However, being a grade 4 level and being, 9, 10 years of age, a lot of them didn't have the independence or the skills to be able to just work independently on different projects. So the first couple of lessons really were chaotic and not a lot got done. It was a lot of freedom for the students, too much freedom, and they weren't able to necessarily concentrate on what they thought they should be doing. So not a lot got done. So what I decided to do as a teacher, it was very, very difficult for me at first to stand back and watch them waste their time, knowing that there was a finite amount of time that we could devote to this project. So what ended up happening was I said, okay, like at the start of the lesson, we're going to have, a 5-minute meeting where we'll go through each of the groups that we're doing different roles, and we'll identify what it is that we're going to do during that lesson. So I'd go to the media people and I'd say, what are you guys going to do today? Tell me your plan. Once I was happy with their plan, they could go off and do it. What is the advertising crew going to do? What are the players? How are the coaches going to run this session today so that their players are developing the skills that they need to be able to be an effective team? So those 5-minute check-ins at the start of the lesson really gave the students a lot more focus on what they were doing. And then at the end of the lesson, we had a quick 1 or 2 minute check-in, and students just basically gave us a quick rating of 0 to 5. How well did you do today at achieving what you said you were going to do at the start of the lesson? And at the start of the project, in the first week to 2 weeks, there was a lot of students who said they were going to do all of these amazing things during the hour of time that they had and didn't end up getting to do it. And they realized through doing that actually the way that they used their time was really important and valuable. So it would have been easy for me as a teacher to step in and say, hey, stop doing that, or like concentrate on what you're doing. But it was really by me stepping back and allowing them to have the freedom, but just giving them some structure in terms of set a goal at the start, and then at the end, let's check in. It gave them that, enough of a checks and balances to be able to make sure that they were following through and doing what they said they did. And as time went on and as we got deeper into the unit and deeper into the project, students were much better at using their time effectively without needing to be reminded of what they were doing. All right, going further. So you can see here students who were researching different rules now about hockey. So this was the referees. So there were 2 referees, and they were trying to research rules and then using those rules to be able to explain those rules to the rest of the teams and the coaches to make sure that the 2 teams who were practicing independently of each other, and actually one team was in one class and one team was in another class. So they didn't actually get to see each other at any point during the week. The only time these two teams would see each other would be at our culminating event at the end of the unit where they were going to have their hockey championship. We would have one referee from one team, from one class, and one referee from another class. So it was really important that the referees got together and they wrote down the rules, and they so one referee would go through this during one lesson, and then when they left and the next lesson would come with the other class, he would sit down and they would look at those rules, and they would sort of go back and forth about the rules. And then finally, when they came to an agreement, it was about how do those rules then get spread to the coaches and to the players so that they knew what was happening. You can see here a video of the students working. We've got cheerleaders working. You can see players practicing on their attacking strategies. We had some of the media crew practicing their filming, and then obviously the cheerleaders practicing what they were doing. So just gives you a little snapshot into what it looked like during a lesson. Now, during that time, I'd be obviously going around, checking in with students, asking them how I could help them, if there was any anything that they needed to be able to make their job a little bit easier. So my role as the teacher wasn't necessarily to become involved in any of the things that were happening. It was just there to support the students if they needed it. A large element of the sport education model and the way that I did it with my students involved reflecting. And as I mentioned earlier, at the end of every lesson, we'd reflect upon what had occurred during that lesson and whether they'd been successful in achieving what they said that they were going to do. You can see here, this photo is of one of the students who was a coach, and he is using an iPad there to explain some strategies to his team. Now, he had experience in using that iPad. He was using an app called Coach Note, sorry. He was using the Coach Note app, and he'd used it previously a year earlier in grade 3 in the Invasion Games unit that we took place to help describe an attacking and defensive strategy. And he decided that that would be a great tool for him to be able to explain to his team. So he came and asked me if I had an iPad that he could use and if I could download that app. So we downloaded the app, and he went away and created a few different set plays and attacking strategies, and then got his team together, talked them through it on the iPad, and then they went and practiced. It was a fantastic piece of independent work where he was able to reflect upon something that he'd done earlier earlier in the year or the previous year, and then to take that knowledge and to be able to transfer it into his role as a coach. So that enabled his team to be able to reflect upon what they were doing. Then they went to the media crew who were filming, looked back at the video of what they were doing, saw whether the strategies that they were using were successful, and then made modifications. So being able to reflect all the way through the unit was a really, really key piece in the success of this sport education unit. At the end of the unit, we also had an element of reflection in terms of the students filled in a Google form that asked them about their experience in being part of the Mustang Cup. You can see there the overwhelming majority of students really enjoyed it, 5 being the highest score, 1 being the lowest. You know, a majority of students were scoring in 4 and 5s in terms of they absolutely loved being part of that sport education unit, and that they said that they would be very, very happy to do it again. What did you learn from taking part in the Mustang Cup? Being able to help others, to trust others, how to be a better coach and make people listen, teamwork. Teamwork's important, trying our best to play well. That all jobs do a lot and all jobs are equal. So you can see the types of things that were taking place. It wasn't, I learned how to dribble, or I learned how to shoot, or I learned how to, you know, be a hockey player. All of those things that students learned were more related to those values, those understandings, those morals that people need to be a part of a good member of society, and somebody who values sport as an important part of society. Again, did you like the way this unit was run? I like it because it was fair and we had suggestions that were easy to think of. You get to learn how to have a hockey match. I like the way it ran because we could choose who we wanted to be. We were responsible for ourselves and our team, and everything was organized. So you can see the students really enjoyed that element of independence and being able to feel like that they were taking control of their physical education experience rather than being told what to do. All right, and taking action at the end of our unit, you can see here our Mustang Cup champions. Now I want to show you a quick little clip from our Mustang Cup tournament so you can see what our culminating event looked like.
And we're here at the marvellous Mustang Cup, the first ever Mustang Cup going off between the mighty green team, which is 4 a.m., versus the resplendent yellow team, which is the terrific 4SB. Nerves are jangling high. I hear the clicking of hockey sticks. Referee Stephen waiting and whistling, has the whistle in his mouth ready to go. Mr. Nathan is coming out. Coaches are ready, security's ready. The two superstar VIPs standing there, sitting there. Some mums here. We have a little bit of music going. Coach over there, Aidan, ready to go. And there, it's a full, exciting game. We don't know which way it's going to go. And the referee's called the game. And we are back in. Ball goes back in. Fabulous rolls. And the ball is out again. It's all go, 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 non-stop from end to end. Joshua ready to receive. 3 people marking him. Debuto on the side. Ball's in. Crazy. It's going well. Joshua tries to tackle. Misses the tackle. Ball goes out. Ooh. Then goes in. Ooh, what's this side? Gets tackled by a girl. And ooh, the mighty Koji swings it out. It's still going up, up, up. It's on the floor. It's down. Here they come. Kevin looks like Kevin's broken through. Kevin has broken through. Kevin has broken through. This could be a goal. But Tyler managed back.
So you get a bit of an idea of what it looks like. The game was incredibly exciting. We've got our cheerleaders there, some of our substitutes.
Looking ready, anxious to go in. And here we have a massive crowd, as you can see. Yeah.
At half-time, we had our cheerleaders who put together a performance. I want to take you to the end of the tournament. We went to sudden death overtime as it was tied 1-1 at the end of regulation time, and it was a very exciting yet controversial finish.
Boy against boy, cats, dogs living together. It's unbelievable. Tyler with a fancy, sneaky little move. Chance there, could be, it's a goal! OSB with it! Unbelievable! Crowd's going crazy! Sticks letting throw! Ooh, angry here! Oh! We have some tears, we have some tears. It's a calamity, but somebody had to lose. At the other end, we have... Incredible. What a game. What an event. Well done, both teams. Amazing. And from here, the crowd gets to say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. You have witnessed a magnificent game. Well done, both teams. But the finals from here, 2-1 for SB.
So, as you could see, it was a very, very exciting finish. And as a consequence of that finish, there were some very upset students, but because of a controversial goal that was given by the referee. Now, at the end of the tournament, what actually happened was a couple of the students were convinced and very upset that they thought the ball had gone out of play. Now, the student who was the referee at the time was a student who was brand new to the school and brand new to the country and had a very, very limited English level. He decided he wanted to be a referee. And at the time, a lot of the other students were upset that he was going to be a referee because they felt that he didn't have the English level to be able to communicate clearly with the players. However, in that moment, he stepped up and was very, very clear with both teams that no, the ball had not gone out of play. Therefore, the goal stood, and that his decision was final, which I think was a really fantastic moment for him to feel like he was a valued part of that class. The rest of the class, once they saw how convinced he was and how certain he was of his position as a referee, they respected his decision. And again, that was a learning experience that took place. There was obviously so much excitement that was building around the tournament that obviously the team that lost in sudden death were very, very upset. However, once they had a moment to reflect upon the success of the season and the success of the students running the event by themselves with very, very little help from myself, they were able to see what a success it was. So that's just a very, very quick overview of my experience running a sport education season. I've blogged about it, and after the webinar, I will share the links to you so you can read more in detail exactly how I went about doing it and what sort of technology we used and the students used to be able to document their sport education journey as they went through that unit. Some tips for running your own sport education unit. If you're thinking about using sport education as a model in the future, here are some of my key tips that I think really are going to help you. First, start small. Don't feel like you need to have this all-inclusive, amazing event that takes place or season that takes place. Just start small. Start with one class or one grade level and experiment. A lot of the time it'll work. And within that, there are learning experiences as well for you as a teacher, as well as the students. A really important thing, I think, is student voice and buy-in, having the students feel like they are a large part of what is happening and that they have a lot of choice in what's happening in terms of the different roles that exist, whether it's the type of sports that exist, just generally the students feeling like they are in control. You as the teacher really are there within the sport education model to support the students. But if they feel that their voice is being heard and that they are really the ones driving the unit, then there is going to be that buy-in from everybody. As I said at the start of the unit, a lot of the students were having difficulty focusing and using their time effectively. So just setting some boundaries in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, as well as being able to feel like you can step back and observe what's happening as well, allows you to assess the students and really get a better picture of students' ability to be effective team players, to develop the different sort of skills and attitudes that they would if they were just a player within that sport. Be a little bit open to chaos. So it's a hard thing to do as a teacher sometimes, is to give over that ownership to the students, knowing that they're going to waste their time or that things are going to look a little bit chaotic, but be open to that chaos because, as I said, through my experience, a lot of the time, the learning that takes place comes out of that chaotic environment. Students being able to then reflect upon what was happening and why certain things were happening or why things are working or they're not working. If you're stepping in as the teacher all the time and telling them to either stop doing what they're doing or to make sure they're focusing, then they're not having that chance to learn about how to work independently. Reflect upon the success of it. As I said, for me, in doing this back in 2013, it worked really well at the time. However, there are a lot of things that have changed about it since then in other units that I've done. And in the future, when I do it again, I will definitely do things a little bit differently. And I'll also take some of the things that I've done in the past and use them again. And by reflecting upon what you've done, you can only improve the experience for your students. So that was a very, very quick overview of my experience of the sport education model. I'm going to share with you in a second some other resources that you can go to. So as I said, I will share these two blog posts about the sport ed season that I ran, reflecting on the sport ed season, and then technology, how we use technology to document student learning and achievement. And I'll also share with you a couple of other blog posts, one from Matt Pomeroy from iPhys-Ed.com about implementing a sport education unit in your curriculum, which will give you another view on how to do it, what sort of things you need, as well as some links to other people who have run sport education units. And then one that was recently, just 2 weeks ago, Adam Metcalf from Avery Coonley in Illinois, about sport ed and a TGFU hybrid unit. So again, he has a lot of information here, and at the very, very bottom, he has a link here to a webinar that he did about sport education and teaching aids for understanding hybrid units. So I will share those resources with you at the end of this webinar, and you can go and get a little bit more detailed information about how you might go about running a sport education unit in your setting. So I mentioned earlier about the squad. Now, the squad, as I said, is an online coaching community, and it's going to help me to be able to coach and help me to be able to help you basically through those monthly webinars, one-on-one coaching. So we've set up Skype calls where I can help you with certain things. You're going to get access to those premium resources and community support. Now, if you want to access next month's webinar, you are going to need to be a member of the squad. The webinars from now on are going to be only available to squad members. Good news for you though, there is a 2-week free trial of the squad. So if you are interested in joining the squad and finding out a little bit about what it's all about, then you can join our 2-week free trial. You can join it. After 2 weeks, if you don't enjoy what's happening, you don't feel it's going to be valuable to you, then you can just cancel your membership and leave the squad. I want to give you a little quick sneak peek of the squad while we're here, just so you can see what's happening for the people that are in it right now. So this is our squad. This is our Slack community. And you can see there's about 11 or 12 people in the community right now from all around the world. We've got some people from New Zealand, some people from Hong Kong. We've got some people from Estonia, India, and the US. And we're discussing a lot of different things in here. We have our general discussion where we're talking about lots of stuff. We've got our PE blog section where we all fantastic blog posts out there from different amazing physical education blog posts are being posted here. We've got our resources channel where I'm posting resources. People are posting resources in here all the time that are available for you to use. We've got our squad goals channel where people are talking about what their goals are, and then that helps me to be able to help them and helps people to support each other. And then we've got our webinar channel where this webinar, the replay of this webinar will be posted and will be accessible to all the people in the squad whenever they want to watch it again at any point in time. So that's a very, very quick preview of the squad community. And like I said, we're giving a 2-week free trial for people who are taking part in this webinar. If you're interested in joining the squad or checking it out for a couple of weeks, all you need to do is go to iPhys-Ed.com/join squad, and you will be able to sign up and join the squad and get your 2-week free trial. Now, after the 2-week free trial, there is a cost. It does cost $7 a month, less than the cost of a very overpriced coffee here in Singapore. But if you find it valuable after 2 weeks, and I'm sure you will, the people that are in there already have really enjoyed being a part of the squad and have found it really, really helpful. I'm sure that if you get in there and you do this free trial, I'm going to be able to help you. It really comes down to you as well. The more you engage within the community, the more that you engage with me, and the more that I can learn about you within those 2 weeks, the better that I'm going to be able to help you. The better that I'm going to be able to plan those monthly webinars, the better that I'm going to be able to help you with that one-on-one coaching, and to help share resources with you that are going to help you with your development as a physical educator. I'm going to open it up now to anyone who's there live. If they have any questions that they want to ask about sport education or running a sport education unit, or comments or anything like that, if you have it, please just add it into the chat box there, and I'd be more than happy to answer it. If you don't have any questions now and you want to send me a question later, just feel free to contact me. You know how to contact me, whether it's via email or social media or through our Slack channel. Please drop me a message, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have about my experience using the sport education model. So see a question here from Rick about MVA during classes. MVA, I'm guessing it's movement something. Can you clarify, Rick, what you mean by MVA, and I'll see how I can answer your question. Moderate vigorous activity. Okay, yeah, great question. How do you ensure that there is moderate vigorous activity during your classes? For me, in that situation with those students, it wasn't something that I was concerned about, because the students, I could see generally as a teacher watching what was happening, were definitely being moderately to vigorously active, especially in Singapore, where the weather is very, very hot. You know, you're 35, 36 degrees Celsius, 95% humidity. The students are really getting their heart rates up most of the time. However, saying that, one of my issues in reflecting about the sport ed season that I did was that some of the students who were involved in maybe some of the roles like media and the advertising and the website design weren't maybe necessarily being as active as they could be during that time. And in one of the things that I've done in other units that I've run is making sure that students rotate through roles. So if they are in a role that is a little bit more sedentary, making sure that they don't do that role for, say there's 2 lessons during a week, but they only do that role for one of those 2 lessons or for a part of a lesson, and then they're continuing to rotate into another role, whether it be a player or a coach or a referee or another role that's going to make sure that they are getting that activity level. But like I said, I wasn't necessarily concerned at the time when I was doing it, because I knew that my students were getting enough activity, and also I wasn't mandated by my school or by any organisation to make sure that students were getting that that movement time for a certain amount of time. I know that some people in different school boards or organisations are mandated to make sure that that happens. However, I wasn't in that situation. So, like I said, a large part of the learning that took place during this unit wasn't necessarily around fitness and movement and developing the movement skills. It was more about developing those skills and attitudes and values and morals that are going to enable students to be participants in sport as an organisation outside of the school context as they get into adulthood. You know, like there are so many different ways that people can be involved within sport and recreation within their community. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the playing area and within the playing roles. So if they're interested in media, or if they're interested in refereeing, or if they're interested in advertising, and that's going to help them to become engaged within their community and within their sporting organisations or recreational organisations in their community, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to open them up to that experience and to give them that experience during school, so that when they go outside of school and they can see that roles exist outside of being a player within the sporting area. So that sort of goes some way to answering your question. I think other strategies for doing that, if you have access to pedometers or heart rate monitors, you could obviously have students using those during the lesson, so you're able to collect some data on the levels of activity that are taking place. And then you can use that data to cross-check and make sure that students are actually being active, if that's something that is important to you and that you're valuing within your program. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. Another question there about doing one sport or multiple sports. I've done that unit with hockey, I've done it with soccer, I've done it with American football or flag football. So there are a variety of different sports you could do it. I would say probably the best way I think to do it would be to stick with one sport for a season, so that students get that affiliation part of it and the season part of it. I think if you're changing between sports, although you can keep the teams, it could work, but the way that I think that works best is sticking with one sport. Maybe it means shortening the seasons a little bit. However, you know, if you're open to having teams participate in a variety of sports, maybe it could be more of an Olympic sport education model where you're competing, staying in the same team and competing in different sports. It's definitely possible. Like I said, the idea is, you know, if you can take elements of that sport education model and other models, and you can put that into your program in a way that's going to be meaningful for you, then I think that that's important. Don't feel that you need to do the sport education model by the textbook meaning of it, do it in a way that, or cherry pick things from it that are going to work for you and for your students to help them to develop those skills, knowledge, attitudes, and understandings, to develop that love of being active or being a part of a community long after they leave school. So yeah, I've done it with one sport before, but yeah, you could definitely do it with multiple sports during the same season, as long as you keep that that idea of having seasons as be a part of that sport education model. So I think that's it for questions for now. Like I said, if you have other questions later on as they come up, or anyone who's watching the replay of this, please feel free just to contact me, ask those questions. We can get some conversations happening on social media or through the Slack group in the squad about sport education. People can share any experiences they have, any resources that they have. Like I said, I'm going to share the resources and some links once we are done with this webinar, and you'll be able to go and find out some more information about sport education and how you think that it might work for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day and your week. And until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay active.